Imagine the scene. You're sitting in the doctor's office, looking at the results of your tests. He looks at you with a serious expression and says, "You have diabetes." And that's it. The silence hangs heavy in the air. No explanation, no action plan. Just those words, echoing in your mind, refusing to fade away. In that moment, your head starts spinning. A whirlwind of questions arises. What type of diabetes is this? Is it serious? Can it be controlled? That cold feeling in your stomach takes over. What do you do now? It's completely normal to feel anxious because the word diabetes itself brings a quiet fear. People often think there's a good diabetes and a bad diabetes, as if it's a matter of luck. But here's a secret that may ease your mind. There is no good or bad diabetes. No matter the type, all require care and attention, but none is more serious than the other. What matters is understanding how diabetes works in the body and how you can treat it the best way possible. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel, Diabetics. This helps me keep bringing amazing tips to improve your health and control diabetes. Let's go on this journey together. Now, let's think about diabetes in a different way. Imagine your body is like a city, and glucose, the sugar in your blood, is like the fuel that keeps the city running. To get this fuel to the houses, there's a special guard called insulin, who makes sure the glucose is transported from the streets, the blood, to the houses, the cells, where it will be used to generate energy. But like any good guardian, this glucose guard needs to be efficient. And that's where the different types of diabetes come in. In type 1 diabetes, imagine that this guard suddenly disappears. There's no one left to control the entry of sugar into the cells. The pancreas, which is like the insulin factory, stops producing this essential hormone. Without insulin, glucose starts to build up in the blood, like fuel that never reaches its destination. This type of diabetes typically appears in children and young people, but surprisingly, it can also develop in adults. It's like the delivery driver who should be taking the ingredients to the kitchen just stops working. What happens? The food stays in the warehouse and never gets used. And then you wonder, how do I live without this guard? The answer is simple but requires commitment. Insulin needs to be replaced from the outside, through injections, to ensure that sugar moves from the blood into the cells. And with care and control, it's possible to live well, even without the insulin guard. The key here isn't which type of diabetes is worse, but rather how you can do your part to help the body organize itself and function as well as possible. Because, in the end, no matter the type of diabetes, what matters is that with the right care, you can keep your system working perfectly. Imagine that the body is a large city, full of streets and houses, and glucose, the sugar in the blood, is the fuel necessary to keep everything running. In this scenario, insulin is the guard responsible for ensuring that this fuel gets to the houses, the cells, where it will be used to generate energy. Now, let's talk about type 2 diabetes. In this case, the guard is still there, but he's a bit disorganized. He tries to do his job, but the key that should open the doors to the houses, the cells, doesn't work properly. Insulin is produced, but it can't do its job like it should. It's like trying to open a door with a key that doesn't fit exactly. The result? Sugar builds up in the streets, the blood, and can't get into the houses. This type of diabetes is the most common, and it's often linked to lifestyle. Poor diet, lack of exercise, and excess weight are factors that make the guard's job harder. But here's the good news. With changes in habits, like a more balanced diet, more movement, and in some cases, the use of medications, the guard can get back on track, and glucose starts to be controlled effectively. It's like when you replace the lock on the door and the key fits perfectly. The city starts running again. Now, imagine you're pregnant, and your body starts going through a complete revolution. Everything is changing, and even the glucose guard has to adapt to this new phase. In some cases, this overload makes the body a little resistant to insulin, and blood sugar starts to rise. This is gestational diabetes. It happens during pregnancy but often disappears after childbirth. Even so, it's important to monitor and treat it, because if it's not controlled, it could leave a door open for it to turn into type 2 diabetes in the future. Despite all the differences, all types of diabetes have something in common. The sugar in the blood gets too high because the body can't use it efficiently. That's why doctors order tests like fasting blood glucose and hemoglobin A1C to check how the sugar levels are. In some cases, more specific tests like the glucose tolerance test help to understand better how the body is handling sugar. Imagine that our body is a well-organized city, with busy streets and houses that need energy to function. That energy comes from the foods we eat, and the main fuel for the city is glucose, or as we call it, blood sugar. But to ensure this energy reaches every corner of the city, there's a special helper: insulin. Now, think of insulin as a very efficient delivery person who picks up the glucose and delivers it to the houses, or cells, where it will be used. Insulin is produced by a factory called the pancreas. If this factory works properly, the city runs smoothly, because glucose reaches where it needs to go and energy flows. But what happens when things go wrong? In type 1 diabetes, something quite curious and complicated happens. The body, without meaning to, starts attacking the insulin factory, that place responsible for ensuring the fuel reaches the houses. Suddenly, the city is left without delivery people. The houses don't receive the energy they need, and the city starts to fall apart. This is what we call an autoimmune disease because the body attacks its own factories and resources, thinking there's a threat. But in reality, there's no enemy. It's just a system failure. In type 2 diabetes, the situation is a bit different. The delivery person is still there, but they don't have the right key to open the doors of the houses. Insulin is produced, but it can't deliver glucose where it's needed. It's like having the wrong key for the lock. They try, but can't succeed. Over time, sugar accumulates in the blood because the glucose can't enter the houses. This type of diabetes is more common and is often related to lifestyle. But the good news is that, with some changes in habits, like a balanced diet, more physical activity, and sometimes medication, we can help the delivery people find the right key and keep the city running smoothly. Then, there's gestational diabetes, which acts like a warning that, during pregnancy, the city is going through a moment of overload. The woman's body is changing a lot, and for a time, the glucose delivery system doesn't function as it should. But after delivery, this problem usually disappears. Still, it's important to manage it so it doesn't develop into type 2 diabetes in the future. The most important thing is that, with the right knowledge, you can control any type of diabetes. Taking care of your diet, moving more, managing stress, and improving sleep quality are actions that help the body function like a well-organized city again. As a famous scientist once said, education about diabetes is not just part of the treatment, it is the treatment. Imagine your body as a big machine full of gears that work together to keep everything running smoothly. Suddenly, out of nowhere, one of these gears starts to fail. It's nobody's fault, and it's not something you did or didn't do. It just happens. And there's no clear explanation for it. For some reason, the body starts acting incorrectly, which is what happens with type 1 diabetes. It's not related to what you eat or your lifestyle, and it's not something you can prevent. It's like the body suddenly decides it needs to attack its own insulin factory, and sugar begins to accumulate in the blood. Although less common than type 2 diabetes, it can appear at any age. In the past, this type of diabetes was called childhood diabetes because it usually appeared in children or young people. But, in reality, it can occur in adults as well. No matter the stage of life, type 1 diabetes can show up at any time. Now, aside from type 1, there's a rarer version called LADA diabetes. Imagine type 1 diabetes had a slower version, like a journey that starts later in life. LADA is just that. It starts in adults and is very similar to type 1, but the process of destroying the insulin factory is more gradual. Because it's a slower process, symptoms take longer to appear, which makes the diagnosis take a little longer as well. And we can't forget another rare type that occurs after surgeries or specific illnesses. If someone has surgery on the pancreas or suffers from a condition affecting that organ, insulin production might be impaired. As a result, blood sugar can become uncontrolled, but the cause is quite different from other types of diabetes. The real truth is that, despite all these differences, all types of diabetes have one thing in common. The body can't use insulin properly or loses the ability to do so completely. Blood sugar levels rise, and health begins to be affected. That's why, if there's any sign, it's essential to see a doctor. They will analyze symptoms, run tests, and understand what's going on in your body to determine what type of diabetes you have and create the best treatment plan. Because, in the end, it's knowledge and medical care that will help adjust the gears of this machine and make everything work properly again. Imagine that our body is like a vibrant city, full of streets, houses, and workers. Each part of the body has a unique function, and all systems need to work in harmony for the city to run perfectly. But, just like any city, sometimes problems arise. And that's when the body needs some extra help. In the case of diabetes, this problem occurs when blood sugar can't be controlled properly. Diabetes can be seen as a challenge with many different forms and causes. Each type of diabetes is like a unique story, but with a common goal: to keep blood sugar under control. And this is possible. Let's understand this better. Imagine that in type 1 diabetes, the body is like a city where the factory responsible for producing the key to open the doors of the houses, insulin, just stops working. Without this key, sugar can't enter the cells and accumulates in the bloodstream. But here's the good news. With the right treatment, like artificial insulin and good medical care, the city can continue functioning well, even without the original factory. The city will need some adjustments, but it can thrive again. Now, in type 2 diabetes, the situation is a bit different. The insulin factory is still working, but the key it produces is no longer opening the doors of the houses properly. The body's cells become resistant to insulin, like the key no longer fits the lock. The city enters a state of disorganization, and to get it running smoothly again, it needs a little help. Healthy eating, exercise, and sometimes medication are the tools that help the city get back on track. And yes, with the right treatment, it's possible to live well and healthily, even with type 2 diabetes. Now, if you or someone you know has been diagnosed with diabetes, take a deep breath. Don't be scared. It's normal to feel lost or scared at first, but the good news is that with the right treatment and lifestyle changes, your body's city can recover and function perfectly. And the most important thing, with the support of a good doctor, you'll understand exactly what's going on and how to handle it in the best possible way. And if you're wondering why some people have a higher chance of developing type 2 diabetes, the answer lies in a puzzle with many pieces. There's no single cause, but a combination of factors that contribute. Let's talk about some of those pieces. Heredity is one of them. Imagine that in your family, you notice some members have common characteristics, like their eyes, height, or unfortunately, diabetes. If someone in your close family, like your parents or siblings, has type 2 diabetes, you're more likely to develop the condition as well. It's like receiving a note passed down from generation to generation. Hey, you have a higher chance of developing diabetes. Although genetics can't be changed, knowing this is an important piece of understanding the risk. Another factor is age. Unfortunately, no one can stop time. As we age, the body slows down a bit, and the risk of the system not functioning perfectly increases. The body's city, over the years, may need more adjustments to keep everything running smoothly. But, while age is an important factor, it is not the only one. The combination of several other factors throughout life is what really determines the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. The good news is that, regardless of these puzzle pieces, it's possible to take steps to help the body function in the best way possible. And that's what makes everything more optimistic. With proper care, the city of the body can continue to thrive, live well, and function healthily. Imagine our body as a large city, where each part has a unique function that is essential for everything to work well. The streets, the buildings, the workers, everything needs to be in harmony. But, like any city, challenges arise over time. In the case of type 2 diabetes, these challenges have roots that stretch far back, through generations. In the beginning, what you don't see is that the city has a history passed down from generation to generation, like an invisible inheritance. Scientists have found that some populations, such as Latinos, African Americans, Asians, and Alaska Natives, are more likely to face difficulties with blood sugar control. It's not that the city is broken, but rather that there's a certain vulnerability in the streets of this city. It's as if these groups naturally have more difficulty managing blood sugar because of a genetic inheritance that stretches far back. But here's the good news. We don't have to be prisoners of this story. While we can't change our genetics or age, the most amazing thing is that there are many things we can control, and that's exactly what can change everything. It's like being the mayor of your city, with the power to improve the infrastructure. With simple choices, you can transform your inner city, making the streets more organized and functioning perfectly. Lifestyle has a profound impact. Diet, exercise, and even stress management work like a cleanup of the city streets. When the city of the body doesn't move well, when the streets are congested or the energy delivery systems aren't functioning right, blood sugar builds up. But with the right attitude, balanced eating, regular exercise, and effective stress management, you can ensure that the body's city functions as well as possible. Let's begin the story with one of the biggest villains in this plot: excess weight. Imagine we're in a city where the body is the center of everything, but something is happening in the streets of this city. The streets are overloaded, blocked, and chaos is spreading. This villain, obesity, has been appearing more and more, especially among children and young people. This is alarming, because when fat accumulates, especially around the belly, it starts to affect the city's essential functions, particularly how the body uses insulin. Over time, this blockage can open the doors to type 2 diabetes. But don't worry. The story has a twist. Here, you're the hero of this journey, and you have the superpower to change the fate of this city. The good news is that with simple choices in your daily life, you can make all the difference and transform the scenario. The key to restoring order is in your hands. Healthy eating, movement, and positive actions. Imagine you're the commander of your own city. You have the power to choose what you put on your plate and how you move your body. Instead of staying still all day, how about taking a step, literally, to improve things? Get up, take a walk, dance or play. Every movement is a step to ensure that the city continues to function, with blood sugar under control. Movement is like a magic key that unlocks health and makes everything work. Now, about food. Imagine the body is like a complex machine that needs high-quality fuel to function well. If you fuel the machine with foods full of sugar, refined flours, and unhealthy fats, it's like putting in low-quality fuel. The machine will still work, but not in the best way. But when you choose natural foods, like fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins, you're giving your body the high-quality fuel it needs to be the best it can be. The body will thank you, and the city will run at full speed. And lastly, think of a sedentary lifestyle like a city that has stopped moving. The streets are empty, the machines aren't working, and life is stagnant. That can't happen. Get up, move. It doesn't have to be anything extreme, but simple activities like walking, climbing stairs, or even playing can be what your city needs to get back to full function. These small actions make a huge difference, keeping the body strong and healthy, with blood sugar under control. Let's dive into a story full of challenges but also great opportunities for transformation. Imagine the body as a large kingdom, where health is the most precious treasure. However, there are some villains constantly trying to steal this vital energy and disrupt the perfect functioning of this kingdom. One of the greatest villains in our story is excess weight. It's sneaky and spreads slowly, especially among children and young people, creating a real threat. Fat, especially that accumulated around the belly, starts to affect how the body uses insulin, opening the doors to type 2 diabetes. But like any good hero's tale, you too have the power to change the story. With smart choices in your daily life, you can turn the tide. Healthy eating, movement, and striving for balance are the secret weapons to fight this villain. Imagine you're the commander of this kingdom, and your mission is to ensure it functions well. You have the power to choose what goes on your plate and how you move your body. Instead of staying still, how about taking a walk or dancing? This will help your body work better, keeping blood sugar under control. Movement is like a magic key to health. Now, let's talk about one of the most powerful allies: nutrition. The body, this great kingdom, needs high-quality fuel to operate efficiently. When you choose foods loaded with sugar, refined flours, and unhealthy fats, it's like fueling your kingdom with low-quality fuel. It will work, but not in the best way. But when you opt for more natural foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins, you are feeding your body with the ideal fuel. And that's what will make your city function at full power. Another crucial factor is daily habits, which directly influence this journey. Smoking, excessive drinking, or poor sleep are like nighttime thieves. They steal energy and leave the body on high alert, making the path harder and increasing the risks of type 2 diabetes. But if you focus on controlling stress, getting good sleep, and seeking emotional balance, the health kingdom begins to prosper once again. A strong heart, with controlled blood pressure, high good cholesterol, and balanced triglycerides, will protect your city from complications. After all, the heart is the king of this land, and it's essential to keep it healthy to protect the kingdom from dangers. Now, one of the most exciting parts of this story is that, with small actions in your daily life, you can make a big difference. Healthy eating, movement, stress management, and good sleep are the tools to prevent type 2 diabetes. You have the power to write the ending of this story. And the best part is that these changes don't need to be complicated, but the results can be powerful. Imagine your health as a card game. Some cards you already have, like genetics and age, but others are in your hands. And the good news? You can play these cards strategically to protect your kingdom and prevent diabetes from taking hold. Now, in some cases, diabetes enters the scene in a special way. Gestational diabetes. Imagine a pregnant woman living one of the most amazing moments of her life, but her body needs to adapt to ensure that the baby grows strong and healthy. In this process, the body may become more resistant to insulin, and in some cases, blood glucose levels rise too much. But with proper monitoring, this condition can be controlled and doesn't affect the future of the mother and baby. In other cases, diabetes may arise from a genetic change, such as in MODY diabetes. In this type, the body has a greater predisposition, and it may be necessary to undergo detailed tests to discover the best treatment. Type 1 diabetes is a bit more complicated. Suddenly, the pancreas stops producing insulin, and the body needs insulin to control glucose. This becomes part of the routine for the rest of their life. Regardless of the type, what they all have in common is that they require care and monitoring. Each has its own specifics, but the goal is the same: to keep blood sugar under control. And the good news is that, with the correct diagnosis and proper treatment, it's possible to live well and healthily. So, diabetics, what did you think of these tips? I really want to know your opinion. Leave a comment here if you liked the video and if there's any topic you'd like to see here. Your participation is really important to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.